Everyone knows that raising money can be challenging. I should say every pastor knows that raising money can be very challenging when you're trying to build a ministry. If you're going to lead a very large church, or if you're going to raise money for missions, if you're going to raise money for stewardship, if you're going to raise money for any kind of special project, it takes attention and intentionality to raise money to do ministry. You've heard the old adage that money follows ministry. I think that's only true part of the time. I think sometimes we fail as pastors to give attention and provide intentionality to the kind of culture we're creating to raise money in our local churches. And I think there's some very simple things that can be done that will help us to create a culture that will provide a foundation and a base for us to build the vision that God's put on our hearts. I don't claim to be an expert. I have had the opportunity to lead 9 campaigns in approximately 25 years of pastoring. And in those 9 campaigns, I think we've raised around $14–15 million as far as our total amount of giving. And I look back, and without that money coming in, it would have been impossible to do what we've done for the Lord. So once again, I don't claim to be an expert, but I would like to discuss a few things that perhaps I've learned along the way about raising money. I'd like us to consider this idea of creating a culture in our church, our local church that we pastor. How do we create a culture for giving that nurtures and creates a sense of awareness and an easiness for people to give? I want to share with you the acronym for C.A.S.H, C-A-S-H. And perhaps this is a simple way we can approach this idea of creating a culture in our ministry for giving. The first letter, C, stands for communicate. We have to learn to communicate about what we need, and we have to communicate when it comes to letting people know what giving money means. Now, what are we trying to say? Well, first of all, we need to communicate what the Bible says about raising money. The Bible has a lot to say about money. In fact, the Bible has more to say about money than it does a lot of other topics that we often want to preach on or teach on in our local churches. And for some reason, we've had a fear. The way we do that here at Westmore is annually we take a month and we generally kind of focus in on some basic teaching about what the Bible says about money. We have to learn to manage money. So we have to communicate that. We communicate what the Bible says, and we teach that from the pulpit. We teach those financial principles. We do it not only in a mini sermon series, we also take the time when we're raising offering to go ahead and share some biblical principles about what giving means. And we try not to take too much time to do that, and we try not to make it forced, but we do let people know the blessing and the benefit that comes with giving. And that's done during offering time and during preaching certain times of the year. Another way that we communicate what the Bible says is we oftentimes share testimonies. We do that through video. But if I didn't have a media team to work with, I would figure out how to do quick interviews from time to time from my pulpit. Just simply invite somebody up and ask them 2 or 3 questions and have them prepared for those questions, and perhaps they have given and tried the Lord in a certain area of their life, and they begin to become tithers, or they begin to give to missions, and suddenly the Lord has begun to open up doors for them. Testimonies are huge, and sometimes it's better coming from them than it is you as a pastor. So this idea of C, the letter C, stands for communicate. Teach what the Bible says. But not only communicate what the Bible says, communicate what you're going to do with the money. In other words, you have to cast vision. People don't just give to give. They want to know what you're going to do with their money. People need a reason to give. If you're a pastor that is forward thinking, and you have a vision, you have a heart for what you're going to do this coming year in missions, or you have a heart for what you want to do in remodeling a piece of the building, or you have a vision to do something in your city, you need to communicate what it is that you want people to give to, and what it is that where their money's going to go. A third thing I think we have to communicate is what are you doing with the money? Not only what are you going to do with it, but what are you doing with the money? And by that we mean giving a simple report. We often share a quarterly report in our bulletin. It's just a simple little statement that gives the total receipts, it gives the total expenses, and it shares a missions line, what we're doing in missions, and we just give a little report. And people then have an opportunity, if they want to call and they're givers, they have an opportunity to stop by or call or ask questions or do whatever they want to do. People love to know that their money is making a difference. What are you doing with their money? What is the condition of the church? The fourth thing that we have to learn to communicate, and I think we often miss this, we have to celebrate wins. When people give and you have a win, many times among ourselves or among leadership, it's easy to celebrate, but it never gets out to the people. And we've learned to be intentional that when we're giving toward a project, or we're giving towards something that we're building, or we're giving towards something that we want to do, when that vision is fulfilled or when that project is accomplished, we want to celebrate that so that the givers can celebrate it with us. I hope that makes sense. Communicating is such an important piece of creating a culture for giving. So we have to communicate what the Bible says. We have to communicate what you're going to do with the money. We have to communicate what you're doing with the money. We have to celebrate wins. And finally, we have to communicate by building relationships with your givers. Who are your key givers in the congregation you pastor? I find that many pastors are insecure with this. They're insecure with sitting down with a person who has been successful and found themselves in a position of being blessed. And pastors sometimes want to run from those kind of people for fear that they're going to want to control with their money. I found the opposite to be true. I find when you get close to somebody, not just for their money, but because you really care, and you share your heart, what you have to remember is God has placed people in your congregation who can help you accomplish the vision that He's put on your heart. I'll go so far to say that God will never give you a vision, but what He won't provide the resources there to accomplish that vision. If your vision is bigger than your ability to resource it, then either He's going to provide it with a miracle, or He's got the resources right there, and you have to figure out how to communicate and get close enough to people and embrace people, because people who have the ministry of giving can help you accomplish a vision. People love to give to big things. People love to be challenged. If it has purpose, if it's going to fit the heart of the church, if it's biblical, people love to give to that kind of thing. You have to learn to communicate. It's an art. I'm going to close with just sharing that one C word with you. We're going to continue in another lesson, but I want to close with this idea. Take a hold of the word communicate and ask yourself the question, how can I communicate better what the Bible says? How can I communicate better with my givers? How can I communicate better and celebrate wins? How can I communicate what we're doing with their money? How can I communicate what we want to do with their money? I think if you'll tackle those 5 things, this C word, communicate, will really benefit you.